Today we're learning two of the most useful animation ideas there are. They add impact and energy to pretty much anything you want to animate. I'm using the ideas in this animation. I can use them to make this animation into this, which can help motivate big effects animation like this. And I'm probably using them too much in this animation. So I can take them out entirely to make it feel more relaxed, or I can just tone them down a bit to make it feel more subtle. The ideas we're covering today are anticipation and overshoot. Normally these ideas are taught separately, but I think it's way better to learn them at the same time because they're kind of like mirror images of each other. So let's dig into what they are, and at the end of the lesson, I'll show you a technique where we can start using these ideas in our own work straight away. Put simply, anticipation is a movement before your main action, and overshoot is a movement at the end of your main action. So this bit here is anticipation, and this bit here is overshoot. Anticipation does two important things. It builds up energy, and it helps with clarity. This little downward movement here is anticipation. This archer pulling back their bow, that's anticipation too. If we're jumping, we go down and then spring upwards. That downward motion, anticipation. When I imagine anticipation, I imagine a spring. So we squish the spring down to add energy and then release it all at once and it bursts upwards. A good rule of thumb for anticipation is that it usually happens in the opposite direction of the main action, and it's almost always smaller than the main action. Of course, there are always exceptions. In this case, I've really exaggerated the anticipation and then had a quite small main action, so I had a little jump. I did this because I thought it looked funnier. And here I've made an anticipation that builds energy in the same direction as the main action, and it still works. But yeah, generally most anticipations are in the opposite direction to the main action. The second reason we use anticipation is to help with clarity in a scene. So it's less about building up energy and more about storytelling. Let's say I want this character to pick up a banana. I could do a really simple movement where he swings his arm up, grabs the banana, and looks at it all in a single motion. But I think we could make it clearer by adding an anticipation pose. In this case, I've brought the hand up and opened the palm before he grabs the object. So he's moving his hand away from the banana before he moves it towards the banana. This creates a nice clear pose indicating what he's about to do. This anticipation isn't building up energy like a jump. It's just creating some more contrast in the poses, which helps with clarity. In this example, I have a simple head turn. Because we're quite close to the character, the head turn is pretty clear. But if we were to show the same movement from further away and fill the scene with lots of characters, the audience might miss this simple move. You can draw the attention of the audience to where we want them to look by adding an anticipation before the main movement. I could even make this anticipation a bit bigger if I wanted to and add a little overshoot. So yeah, anticipation in this case is being used as a tool to make the scene a little clearer. Even though anticipations do happen in the real world, they're far more common in animation. That's because animators are often more focused on clarity and energy than realism. So if you want a cartoony flavor to your motion, exaggerate your anticipations, and if you want a more realistic or understated motion, consider reducing or removing anticipations. Okay, on to our second idea, overshoot. As I mentioned before, overshoot comes at the end of the action. It's where we go too far and bounce back. Overshoot is super useful for slowing things down really quickly while making them feel like they still have weight. Let's do an experiment with this car. Let's start with what people might call the default way to slow things down. We get closer and closer together as it comes to rest. But what if we want the car to stop suddenly? This is how it would look if we just take out all of the easing, so all of that slowing down section. It doesn't feel very natural, does it? It comes to a sudden stop, but doesn't have any weight now. So now if I add this overshoot back in, you can see that it stops suddenly, but has a lot more weight. Just say I have a rubber ball and I want to drop it and stick to the floor. It could do something like this, but it feels a bit weird. But if I let it go too far, then spring back up, it feels a bit better. I can add multiple overshoots to this motion. So when it springs back up, it goes too far a second time before settling into its final pose. The classic example is the springy door stopper. This is essentially lots of overshoots in a row as it tries to settle in its final position. The more overshoots, the bouncier things feel. You can definitely overdo this, so just experiment with finding a nice balance. Overshoots don't just happen with objects, they happen with characters too. In this jump, the character touches the ground, they squash down before bouncing into their final position. That squash pose is the overshoot. Here's an example where I have a chef holding a ladle as they make a gesture. I've decided to give a bit of an overshoot to the gesture, which really helps give some weight to the ladle. A good rule of thumb is that an overshoot is going to be smaller than the main movement, and if you do multiple overshoots, each one is going to be smaller than the last. Animation ideas like these are really fun to learn, but when I was starting out, I had a really hard time trying to figure out how to actually use them in my own work. So, for example, I might start animating something like this and think, well, it lacks energy, so it might need some anticipation. But I've already drawn all these other frames, so I guess I can kind of squish the anticipation in between them. But when I test the animation now, I realize that some of these in-betweens aren't working because the spacing's gone a bit weird and the arcs aren't quite working with this new pose squished into the middle. So I start redrawing parts of the character, trying to make the arcs work. But because I've got so many drawings already done, it's really hard to start to change this at this point. And when things are this hard to change, I think that we just stop experimenting and having fun with our animation. So what I do now is much more organized. For a movement like this, I might start with 3 poses: the start pose, the end pose, and one pose in between called a breakdown. I might even roughly time them out on the timeline. This gives me a rough idea of how everything is feeling, and at this point I ask myself, could this motion use an anticipation and maybe an overshoot? For this specific motion, I know that I want it to feel powerful and dramatic, and from everything we've learned, I'm pretty sure anticipation and overshoot are going to help quite a bit. So I can draw in an anticipation pose, and I'm going to go really big here because I really want it to feel like he's building up lots of energy. The character's quite cartoony, so I can really push this pose. And just a bit of a side note, if you're enjoying this class, there are loads more videos on this channel that I think you'll love. And if you feel like taking your animation even further, you can check out a new deep dive course I've just released called Animation Basecamp. This is my idea of the ultimate animation fundamentals course. It's got 25 exercises and loads more resources where we cover all the most important ideas for becoming a great animator. There's a link below if you want to check it out. So now I have this anticipation pose, I can step through it, and I think I might actually add an overshoot pose as well. So I'll pop that one in here. So what you might notice about this overshoot pose is it's pretty subtle. So I've mostly moved his clothes up because they kind of like overshoot further than the rest of the body. And I think that gives it that nice little bit of extra impact and weight. Now I can step through these poses and I can kind of get a sense of how this motion is going to work. So I've got these 5 poses. I've got my starting pose, my anticipation pose, a breakdown pose, an overshoot pose, and the final pose. So these are the 5 poses I experiment with to figure out this motion. Because I added such a big anticipation, I found that my breakdown didn't flow as well as I wanted, so I changed that slightly. But this was so much easier because it's one drawing rather than 5 or 6. Once I'm happy with these poses, I can draw all the frames in between and I can feel pretty confident that it's going to work. And now I've got the fundamental ideas in the animation figured out, I can get a bit more indulgent by layering over some effects animation to really exaggerate this impact and power. But that wouldn't work if I just kept the animation the way it was when I started, because I don't think that the energy felt motivated by his action. If you'd like a class on this sort of effects animation, let me know in the comments below. So you might remember the chef at the start of this class. I actually animated him 7 different ways to sort of explore different ways that we could use anticipation and overshoot for that one motion. I did this by experimenting with different kinds of anticipation, different kinds of overshoot, and I was able to do that really quickly using the technique I've just showed you. If you'd like to know more about this process, I actually have a full video here on YouTube called Keyframe Like a Pro, and you can check it out here. Anticipation and overshoot are 2 of the most useful ideas any animator can have. So I hope you enjoyed this class. And if you have, maybe you can check out other videos on this channel. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch you next time.